Erling Haaland just spent a month terrifying every defense at the World Cup. 7 goals. Norway's best World Cup run in history. Then he steps off a plane in Oslo carrying a dead raccoon. Stuffed. Mounted on a wooden board. Hugging a bottle of whiskey like it's the only thing that got him through the flight. He paid $750 for it. On purpose. And here's the part almost nobody's asking. Why whiskey? Not vodka. Not rum. Not tequila. There's an actual reason that Raccoon is holding whiskey and nothing else. And once you see it, you'll notice the exact same trick every time a whiskey brand sells you a bottle. Quick context if you don't follow football. Haaland is arguably the most feared striker alive right now. Manchester City's number 9, the guy defenses build entire game plans around. He plays with his hair pulled back in this long blonde ponytail that got so famous, actors were copying it in the stands. Norway, meanwhile, hadn't been to a World Cup in 28 years, since before Haaland was even born. Then, in the summer of 2026, they go on a run nobody predicted. They beat Brazil. They reach the quarterfinals for the first time in the country's history. And Haaland becomes the story of the entire tournament, without his team ever lifting the trophy. But every Cinderella run ends somewhere. Norway meets England in the quarterfinal, in Miami, and loses 2-1 in extra time. Tournament over. No trophy, no parade, just a flight home. Except weeks earlier, back when Norway was still playing group games in Dallas, Haaland had wandered into a place called Wild Bill's Western Store. The kind of shop that sells cowboy hats to tourists who've never stood within 1,000 miles of an actual cow. He tried on the hats. He bought a Longhorn belt buckle. He picked up a shirt with a cheeky Dallas joke printed across the front. Completely normal Souvenir behavior. Right up until he reached the back corner of the store. That's where things stopped being normal. Sitting on a shelf, mounted on a slab of wood, was a fully taxidermied raccoon. Little glass eyes. Paws wrapped around a small glass bottle. Head resting on top of it, like it had just had the longest day of its life. The store had already nicknamed it the Whiskey Raccoon. $750. Not a hat. Not a jersey. A dead animal hugging a drink on display, waiting for exactly the right unhinged World Cup souvenir hunter to walk by. And out of every single item in that entire store, this is the one Haaland decided he needed. He didn't even wait to explain himself. When Norway landed in Oslo, cameras caught him walking off the plane with a designer tote bag in one arm and the whiskey raccoon tucked under the other. He posted the photo with 3 words. It followed me home. For about an hour, half the internet assumed it was AI nobody could quite believe. A real person paid real money for a real dead raccoon holding a real bottle of whiskey. Then the store confirmed it themselves. By that point, the raccoon was already sold out. The owner told reporters their taxidermist had actually retired. There isn't another one coming. Here's the part nobody's talking about. That same store sells a squirrel holding a bottle of Jack Daniels for $500, and a second squirrel holding a toy gun, instead no alcohol for $50 less. Somebody tested this and found out a stuffed animal holding whiskey sells better than a stuffed animal holding almost anything else. Not vodka, not rum, not tequila, even here in Texas. Whiskey. That's not random. For 200 years, whiskey has been the drink Americans reach for when they want to say, this is who we are. Moonshine running through the backwoods during Prohibition. A literal act of Congress in 1964, naming bourbon a distinctive product of the United States. At some point, whiskey stopped being a drink and became a costume. Strap a bottle to a dead raccoon, and it stops looking weird. It starts looking American. But looking American isn't actually why this raccoon is sold out right now. Something else is. But here's the actual secret connection, the one that has nothing to do with cowboy costumes. The reason this raccoon is worth talking about right now isn't the raccoon. It's that you can't get one anymore. The taxidermist retired. The stock is gone. And the second something whiskey adjacent becomes impossible to get, it stops being a product and starts being a story. That's the entire game behind allocated bourbon. Take Pappy Van Winkle, the youngest bottle in the lineup retails for around $80. On the secondary market, that same bottle can go for 10, 15 times that, sometimes more. Distilleries don't accidentally run out of their best whiskey. They release less than demand on purpose every single year. Collectors don't chase it because it tastes exponentially better than the bottle next to it on the shelf. They chase it because somebody convinced them they might never see it again. And if you've ever paid extra for a bottle just because the label said, "Limited congratulations," you already know exactly how Haaland felt standing in that store. Haaland's Raccoon just got hit with the identical trick. Sold out the day it went viral. Suddenly worth talking about. Worth writing about. Worth you watching a video about it right now. And somehow, without trying, Haaland became the perfect ambassador for that idea. He didn't come home with a trophy. Norway lost. Tournament's over. 7 goals in his first major tournament. Norway's top scorer. And he's still walking through an airport more famous right now for a stuffed raccoon than for anything he did on the field. He asked his followers to help him name it. Cowboy. Ranger. Tax. Someone suggested ROW, Raccoon on Wheels. Doesn't really matter which one sticks. The raccoon already did its job. Haaland didn't leave the 2026 World Cup with a medal. He left with a stuffed dead animal that understands scarcity better than half the whiskey brands trying to sell you a bottle right now. That's the real souvenir here, not the cowboy hat, not the belt buckle, not the shirt. Somebody in Texas figured out exactly what people can't resist and stapled it to a whiskey bottle. That's what this channel is for. The weird headline that turns out to have 200 years of real history sitting quietly behind it. If that's your kind of thing, the subscribe button's right there, and there's another one of these coming soon.